Welcome to another episode of the Idaho House Republicans podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Remember, this podcast is to let you know a little bit more about the representatives that you have sent to the legislature. And today we're going to be speaking with Representative Clay Handy. He is Legislative District 27, Seat B, and he is in his second term here at the State House. Good afternoon to you, Representative Handy.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about you. And you, basically, it looks like Cassia County and Burley couldn't survive without you. You were on Burley City Council for 8 years. You were on Cassia County Commissioner for 8 years. You're a Cassia Regional Hospital Board member for 13 years, 8 years as the chair. You're the Burley Area Development Association chair, and you've been on that for 8 years. You are on the Idaho Trucking Association. You're 2 times the president of that. You enjoy hiking, skiing, fishing, and you have a wonderful wife named Christine, and you have 6 children.
I do, and 21 grandchildren.
Another
one on the way. So soon.
That is quite a quiver. Yeah. That is quite a quiver. And thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's first talk about Legislative District 27, Representative Handy. Where is it in Idaho, and what do your constituents care about?
Our legislative district used to just be Minidoka and Cassia County. After the last election, we picked up Oneida County, which is Malad, Idaho. And the area is very agriculture dependent.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived there my whole life, as did my father, as did my grandfather. My grandfather had he stayed in town when Burley was made incorporated, he would have, or had his mother stayed in town, he would have been the first baby born in Burley.
Wow.
And then my great-grandfather came into the Malta area in the 1890s.
Wow, so it's right around statehood.
Yeah, and the area is what I think some of the finest people in the state, in the country. Good, solid people, good moral values, good logical thinkers. I never, ever have a problem with someone being out of control when they talk to me. That makes sense?
Yes.
Everyone's very...
Treat you with respect, dignity.
Everyone treats each other with respect. My great-grandfather served in the legislature in the 1930s.
Really? And what was his name?
His name was James Albert Handy.
Fantastic.
And he was the first one to run legislation to put state money into local schools.
Really?
It took him 3 terms to get it signed by the governor.
Wow.
And so that was the beginning. And I think all they did was send some money to poor districts that couldn't afford to pay their teacher for at least 4 months.
Wow.
And that was the issue. His son, Leo James Handy, was in the legislature in the 1950s. And at that time, he had a trucking company, and we hauled a lot of beer from Boise to Burley area.
Beer, Boise to Burley.
It's
a lot of
deal.
bees. Yeah.
Okay. Well, along came a tax on beer. And my grandfather was told by the brewing company that they didn't want that tax. And he told them it needed to be there. It made sense. And he voted for the tax on a Thursday. And Friday was the last day we ever hauled any beer from Boise to Burley. And so I was raised, I think, with wonderful examples. My father was a county commissioner, but the thing my grandpa told me as a young man that I've remembered is, he said, if you live in a community, you have an obligation to make it better.
Amen.
And so I think my volunteerism is reflective of my parents and the way we were raised. And there isn't any place I know that you can volunteer and be as rewarded as in the district that I represent. Just to give you just a short explanation of our district.
Please.
The speaker, well, he's my cousin, so he's not in my district. Sorry.
The speaker, Mike Moyle, you're talking about, is your cousin.
I used to babysit him when he was little.
That is a good trivia question.
Yeah, the lieutenant governor is from Burley area. He's from
yes,
Oakley,
he is.
From our district. Also from our district is the superintendent of public construction.
Yes, she is. Debbie Critchfield.
And then the senator from our district is the pro tem. And then the other representative is Assistant Majority Leader in the House.
So it's Kelly Anthony. And
Kelly
Assistant Majority
and
is Doug Pickett.
Pickett. So I'm the only peon from our area, but I get along just fine being a peon because it's been really fun to serve the people that from our district.
Well, but I don't think many could say, in defense of your peonness, if that's a word, that you've been on city council for 8 years and county commission for 8 years and the regional hospital board for 13 years and the development association chair. So, I mean, you have served your community with great gusto and commitment.
I have tried to make my grandpa proud.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Now, talk about, you are the two-time president of the Idaho Trucking Association. You just mentioned that you had a beer driving truck grandfather, but I believe you are in the trucking industry yourself.
We are. We still are. We have a terminal in Meridian and in Paul and Burley, Pocatello, Salt Lake, and Idaho Falls. We haul lots of. I try to keep my guys home every night. We have about 165 trucks now.
Wow.
About 280 employees, of which is a topic that something I'm really proud of is we have 28 felons that work for us, and they're all doing wonderful.
Right.
Well. So I try to find people that
need a second chance.
Yeah, need a second chance, and I love doing it that way. And I'm pleased to say that my son and son-in-law and nephew that are running the company now have the same attitude.
Praise God.
Yeah, it is really
everyone deserves a second chance, and a lot of times when you're given that second chance, you rise to the occasion.
Wonderful employees.
Good job.
Wonderful.
Good job.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what committees do you serve on?
Well, up until this year, the first 3 years, I served on JFAC.
Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee.
Yeah, the nickname, Joint Finance and Appropriation. Transportation, of course, which I love, and Judicial Rules.
And are you Vice Chair of Education?
I'm Vice Chair of Education this year, yeah.
Okay. So
now education's a new one. This year I'm not on Joint Finance.
Right.
Just on education instead.
Right. Well, Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee meets every day, 8 o'clock on Fridays, 7 o'clock. It's every day during the session. It doesn't leave you a lot of time to be on other committees.
No, if not being on JFAC this year is kind of like a vacation. I mean, sometimes I don't walk to the Capitol building till around 8 o'clock.
Crazy.
And on
Sleeping
JFAC,
in.
JFAC, the first year, I think we met at 7 about every morning.
Right. So, let's talk about that transition for you from the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee to not being a part of it. You've had some kind of revelations or some thoughts about how you might make that process easier going forward for members that are not on JFAC, because you've been both on it and off it, and you have some ideas on how to help those that aren't on it. What's your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are would be a simple fix, but I think it would be very beneficial.
And what are you thinking?
The first week of the legislature is slow.
It is. There's very few bills introduced.
No, there's lots of open hours and days and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yet this year, not being in JFAC, I'm amazed at how little information I actually get about the departments and their finances. So I'm thinking that what we should do next year is in that really slow week, each germane committee should hear from the departments that they're over a report, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, as long as they need or want, where the department can explain to their germane committee what they do, what their goals are, what their challenges are, and what their costs are, what their budget looks like, and what any kind of additions they want to add to their budget for the coming year, just as a FYI.
Right.
Not to debate
kind
it.
of a heads up,
yeah,
right?
Not to debate it or anything, because that's that they can do that in JPAC, but just so the people in the germane committee have an understanding of it, so that when their budgets come to the floor, besides just the 10 House members that are on JPAC, at least the 12 or 10 or however many members of their germane committee will at least have a little better idea of what's going on. And some of them may get curious enough to do some lots of digging, deep diving on their own.
So, for example, you're on the education chair, so maybe hear from the superintendent of public instruction, maybe hear from the court system because you're on judiciary and rules
Right.
and transportation
Yeah.
related.
Well, I think
So at
would
least
be
you
fun.
have the heads up on what matters to you.
Yeah, that I think that would just
Interesting.
be it would be, cost you nothing, and
Right.
we would be more productive in that first week that we're here
Right.
because, a lot of people are saying, "Dude, this is kinda slow.
Yeah.
Wish I lived closer," right?
Well, makes sense.
And, yeah, I think it would be great. I think more people need to understand, the finances.
So, Representative Haney, let's talk another finance issue, which is close to your heart because, again, it's you have a trucking business, but transportation funding. So, talk about
Mm.
historically, we've been able to do amazing amounts of, I think we did $1 billion or so of transportation related funding over the last several years. And that committee is driven by Joe Palmer. He's the chair of that
Yeah.
committee, done a fine job. Maybe talk about how the funding has been done in the recent past and challenges you're seeing like in this year, budget year, and going forward.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about that. The first time that I had anything to do with the legislature, I had just got out of college. I came to Boise with my grandfather. He was on the board of directors for the Trucking Association. We went to the meeting. At the end of the meeting, and before we had lunch together, he stood, he banged on his glass and he stood up and he said, he said, I introduced my grandson earlier, but I want you to know that he will be taking my place on the board of directors. And I'm sitting here, what am I, 23 years old, just out of college, just married. And I'm looking at these industry giants like
Right.
the head of Garrett Trucking, the head of PIE. And,
You're like, did I lose a bet? I mean,
and, I'm going, and they're looking at me like, what does that guy bring to the table, right?
right.
Anyway, so that's how I got baptism by fire in the trucking industry. And I think within 6 or 7 years, then and it was the first time I was president of the Trucking Association. But always, all I heard for 20 or 30 years was transportation is funded by taxes on fuel, dedicated funds. If you mentioned that you would like to take some money out of general funds or sales tax, it was like not only no, but never.
Okay, so there's two sets of money. There's dedicated funds that comes from
From the
specific taxes, fuel
yeah,
taxes, federal and state.
federal and state, yeah.
And then when you say general funds, that means the budget. That's the JFAC,
Budget,
Joint Finance
right,
Advisory
the sales
Committee.
taxes and
Gotcha.
other taxes.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it was just not even considered. Well, we haven't raised fuel tax, I think, since 2016, and definitely the demand has grown. But as the state has grown and there's been such an influx of people and taxes being paid, there was plenty of money there. Now, all those people coming in created a demand for more lane miles, which you can't do with just dedicated funds, right? And then on top of that, kind of the perfect storm, all of our interstate system was aging out at about the same time, especially the section from Boise to Idaho Falls. So you have all of those miles of interstate with overpasses that need to be replaced. And
Mhm.
if we replace them now, it'll be a lot cheaper than if we wait till we accumulate money and replace them 5 or 6 years from now. So consequently, I think Dirk Kempthorne ran the first bill to produce Garvey bonds, which we supported as an industry, and there were lots of new lane miles built with those Garvey bonds.
And what are the funds? So what do you repay Garvey bonds with? Is that
With
with the dedicated funds?
Well, yeah, in
Okay.
the past, that's where I think that's always been paid back.
Okay.
And then a few years later, then the Tecum bonding took place. I think it's transportation efficiency and congestion. Anyway,
I
something
won't
along
I
that
won't be
line.
able to argue with you.
Yeah,
So I'll
I
just
should
go with
know
that.
Anyway, so
And how are the Tecum bonds funded? Same
they're
thing.
also paid back the same way.
Okay.
So we sold all these bonds and all the construction we've seen on the interstate the last few years been good share of those been paid by Tecum funds. So now all of a sudden this year, so last year, like there was like 300 or 275 million last year that came out of general funds for transportation.
For transportation.
The 3 years before that, it was 300 million. Now this year is 0. So local highway districts are losing 30, 31, 32% of their income or of their budget that
Right.
they've had the last 4 or 5 years with no advance warning.
Mm.
So some of them are probably caught in between projects. Some of them are probably caught all of a sudden. This year was the year we are going to replace the dump truck, and now we have no funds for it. So it's put them all in a bind. And then on top of that, now we're paying back bonds, the Garvey and the Tecum bonds.
Which were basically only interest for a while because you ramped those up, and now there's principal and interest payments.
Now there's, I think the note, the email I got when I requested information was, yeah, 120 million will be our payment this budget year for bonds. So that makes a huge difference when all of a sudden you don't have any general fund money, everything's got to be funded out of dedicated funds, and out of that dedicated funds, you got 120 million already committed to paying back the bonds. And I've always been surprised at how little anyone talks about that debt, because nobody gets too excited about talking about debt. But we kind of did the same thing with schools. We took a lot of debt out for school facilities.
Yeah, about $1.1 billion, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's supported by specific tax dollars
it is.
I believe it's sales tax revenue, right? So that's supported by quote unquote general funds.
But in a year like this, every dollar that you don't have means that there's money coming off of everybody's budgets in JPAC.
Right.
And I'm sure there'll be a big discussion about that because
so where does the future of transportation funding come from?
Well, I'd probably get tarred and feathered if I said this at a trucking convention, but I would guess that we will be going back to fuel taxes for an increase.
Oh, okay.
But I will tell you this: you'll enjoy this story. So I drive a Tesla car.
Okay,
that's my second one.
Okay,
both of my son-in-laws drive Teslas. My son drives a Tesla.
Seeing a trend.
I ordered 7 years ago 4 Tesla semis. Because at the time with California CARB rules, if we were going to continue to haul cement out of Oregon, because Oregon was going to adopt CARB, then we had to have a certain percentage of our fleet that was petroleum free. So we ordered these. We still haven't got them.
Wow.
And there are and will be more and more electric vehicles, and some of them will be in the semi range, but not a ton of them because, well, it's hard to say. There will be. Right now, a lot of our garbage trucks run on electricity and those kinds of things. Well, they pay no fuel taxes.
Right, but they use the roads.
And they use the roads. So the Trucking Association, for 2 years in a row, the first 2 years I was in the legislature, tried to pass an electric fuel tax. And we couldn't get it. You'll get a kick out of this. We couldn't get it out of the committee on the Senate side because there were a lot of people on the committee voted no because they made a pact that they weren't going to vote yes on any new taxes.
Okay.
So they called this a new tax. So my trucks will start coming this year, and I'll run them, and there'll be no road taxes being collected.
Right. And so you're thinking that it's fairness, right? That everybody uses the road should pay a tax equally. But they looked at it as a new tax. So that was that defeated your bill, basically. The prospects of your business.
2 years in a row. So, but the industry, of course, ran the bills because we want to pay our own way, right? We want to be responsible, but they both got held in committee.
Well, sometimes it takes a long time to get a piece of legislation through.
Sometimes it does.
It does. It just does. And sometimes it needs tweaking, and sometimes it changes. It just takes time.
But I've always, I thought, well, if and when my trucks start coming and I start operating them, I would say, hey, thank you.
I tried. Yeah, I tried to charge myself.
We tried. Maybe I'll just send a donation to our local highway district.
So totally different. This probably came out of the Juden Rules Committee, but there's been you've voiced some concern over this sex offender registry.
Yeah.
Talk about what you'd like to see change there.
Okay, here's what I'd like to see, and I'll give you a little background. I told you I hired felons.
Yes?
I've hired probably 5 sex offenders. And as I've heard their story, I mean, they're all registered for life as a sex offender.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've heard their stories, I felt like this isn't right. I mean, you get statutory rape is, when someone's too young for you, but it's consensual. So you can have, and I have a guy that was charged with statutory rape, has to register for life as a sex offender, and he married the girl. So yeah, you could, in 30 or 40 years, his grandchildren might be looking through the sex offender list, and grandpa's on there.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the states surrounding Idaho adopted a 3-tier system years ago that the federal government kind of promoted, to where there's a tier 1, which have the opportunity to expunge their record within 10 or 15 or 20 years. And then there's a tier 2 that may or may not expunge, and tier 3 that they're never
No
going to
way.
expunge. And what the federal government liked about the 3-tier system is then probation, parole, and all the people working with these people could spend time with the 3rd tier, because they're the ones that most likely to recidivize.
Right.
And then the 1st tier, the minor things and the statutory rape, would be able to expunge after a period of time and not be a burden to probation, parole. So I want to bring something like that to Idaho. I had it drafted for this year, but just I hadn't had time to do the homework with people before session started. So it will be back next year. And for people, especially in the statutory rape category, that gives them an opportunity to expunge their records.
And that is that you expect to bring next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my philosophy is people can change, and the people I hire have changed.
Right, and you've given them the opportunity to change.
And I would like to.
And a lot of times that's what you need.
Yeah, and I'd like to I can tell you a dozen stories. If you have time, I'll tell you a quick story.
Sure.
Okay, so here's a gentleman in Utah, gets a statutory rape years ago. He moves to Idaho, gets married. His record gets expunged in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
So in the community, he lives in Idaho. He happily married. He's been married 20-some years. He has a job at his church to go to the church house every night and make sure that the doors are locked and the lights are turned out. Well, a couple of people in town fooling around on the registry and found that this guy was a sex offender. Then they got online and found the article about it, and it's a picture of a 17-year-old girl. So these guys are thinking that this 44-year-old guy raped this 17-year-old girl.
Right, because they don't realize it's an old article.
Didn't put it together. And so he goes to the church one night to clean, and they jumped him and beat the crud out of him. And that story may sound really like, you're kidding me, right? But there isn't uncommon that people's reaction to the registry can be extremely violent and anything but forgiving. So for the people that haven't done anything that I would consider horrific, then I would like them to have the opportunity.
You'd like to see this
change their life.
3-tiered system.
I'd like to see the 3-tier system like surrounding states have.
Well, Representative Clay Handy, we just thank you for joining us on the Idaho House Republicans podcast. As a reminder, Representative Clay Handy represents Legislative District 27, Seat B. He's in his 2nd term. And we just bless the work of your hands as you continue to work here within the legislature. And we thank you for joining us on the Idaho House Republicans podcast. And as we always say before we sign off, God bless the great state of Idaho. And thank you, Representative Clay Handy.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Sunrise on the Snake River plain, red, white, and blue in the window pane. Work boots dusty from yesterday, but we're back at it the Idaho way.